I was a different person now, and it was a new home, a fresh new beginning to me. One morning, grief knocked on my door, beckoning for my attention. Grief knocked, and I ignored. After all, I didn't invite her over, and her timing was terrible. I was having guests over to my new place, and her presence was embarrassing. She could be so erratic and unpredictable, it was better to leave her uninvited to the party, easier to simply avoid her altogether. Hopefully someday she would leave me alone. But she didn't. The more I ignored grief, the louder she knocked. She began showing up in different masks, attempting to get my attention. Some days she would look like anger, other days like jealousy. Some days she would show up as disgust, other days like depression or anxiety. She would disrupt my alone time and my time with guests. My guests would complain that she was a nuisance, which humiliated me. Finally, one day I decided to confront her. She knocked, and I swung the door open. This time she was dressed as frustration. I ripped her mask off of her, and I was surprised by what I saw. Underneath the mask, she looked like the little girl version of me. I recognized the look in her eyes, and at first I wanted to tell her to go home, that this wasn't her home anymore, that I've moved on to bigger and better things. But instead, I stood with her for a moment longer, and for the first time, I didn't judge her. I leaned down to meet her eyes with curiosity. She met my eyes and asked, "Could you just hold me for a while? I could really use the company." With fearful hesitation, I took hold of her hand and invited her inside. We sat by the fireplace, holding each other through the night. The warmth of the fire seemed to melt away my fears and filled my empty new apartment with a sense of comfort. After that night, my relationship with grief changed. When she knocked, I would let her in. Sometimes I would have to reschedule, but I made sure that she knew that her time together was important to me, and I would show up for her as soon as I was able. She began to trust me, that I was there for her, that I regarded her. It turns out that was all she needed in order to leave my house. And to my surprise, it turns out that this was all I needed in order to finally feel at peace in my new home.